Hey y'all, welcome to In My Feels But I'll Heal podcast, where we sip some tea, talk about some tea, laugh through the chaos, and get real about mental health and healing. I'm Denise, your host, here to remind you that it's okay to feel all the feels, and it's even better when we get to heal through them together. Let's take a deep breath, vibe out, and dive in. Welcome back. I know it's been quite a while, but so many exciting things are happening. And today's important theme is all caregivers. And so, this is a very important season of our lives in which we are really trying to recognize all the caregivers and everything that they go through. I recently had a very important conversation with Keith Hawkins, the founder of the Color of Coffee Collective, in which this conversation really sprouted from. And so I want you to go ahead, look them up, research them, and it's going to be the basis for today's conversation. But let's go ahead and get into it. And so when we think about caregivers that are in our lives, sometimes we get put into this role, sometimes in progress, or sometimes it's kind of like out of nowhere where we just deep dive into this role and responsibility. For many of us, it is that this role is one that particularly participates with our parents. And so, whenever Keith and I were having this conversation, he recounted me on his experience of having to be initially a caretaker for his dad, who has now passed, and also for his mom and now stepdad, all dealing with Alzheimer's and dementia. And so, as we know, there's not enough research that really suggest and give us a good, clear identity of those components that affect us people of color when it comes to Alzheimer's. And so there's still a lot of developing research that is kind of helping us narrow these things down. I myself, I've been participating with an organization called Karma as part of the University of Houston, which is studying behind Alzheimer's and dementia and some of those umbrella things that are happening to health and especially with these populations. I participated in their studies. I've gone and tried to look also what can I do to help the cause. So if you're interested, go ahead, look them up and participate. It's an important aspect to being an advocate in our communities. But when we talk about burnout and when we talk about the role of burnout in caregivers, sometimes it's due all the changes that happen in our lives. And so sometimes whenever we put into this role, it's right in the midst of everything that is happening. So work, family, friends, whatever you're doing in the community, it all takes a shift. And then after long periods of time and even short periods of time of like, when is this gonna offload? And it doesn't offload because the caregiver role sometimes feels like we cannot turn it off. And these roles and responsibilities keep coming up and still expected to show up, still expected to help cook, clean, shower, bathe, all the roles that come within it. But you stop taking care of yourself. And so that's really where we tend to see the burnout aspects of it, lack of motivation, the start of depression, the start of anxiety, the unknowns, having to make hard decisions, such as where do we place our loved ones? Is it with me? Is it in a senior home? But what do we really do? And having to make those hard decisions, all in the midst of hearing other people's opinions. And so it's the truth and hard realities that come with being a caregiver that at times we have to make really hard decisions for those that are no longer able to care for themselves. And sometimes we are put into this caregiver role, and sometimes we're taken out of it, and sometimes we're being placed back into it. Recently, even for me, and it's happened a couple of times where I've been placed in this role myself, not due to illness, but due to a personal injury. And so it first started with my father. I remember on this particular day, we had went to go eat, and he was driving his own car, and I was driving my own car. I made it to the house, and shortly right after I made it to the house, I got a phone call of my dad saying, "Come back, I got into a car accident." I make it to the scene, and my dad's on the ground. They have the neck brace on him, and I was the only one available. Mom was out of town, siblings were not available. But I just remember at that time, it just so happened I was like on a summer break. I wasn't in school. And so I had the most flexibility to take on the caregiver role. And so having to be at the hospital overnight, figuring out the feeding and medication. My dad couldn't move around as much, and my brothers had to step in. And this is where some of the things that go out the door in terms of like shame or embarrassment um, or even sense of privacy for the person you're caregiving for and even for yourself. It's like having to bathe the individual. I know my brothers had to like step in and bathe my dad and take on that caregiver role for him in that time of need until he was able to recover. And so sometimes we are placed in these caregiver roles either by health, personal injury, or other related things that make it to where we have to step up or we have no other choice. And it's very different. And I think when I think about a caregiver role, sometimes I think about cultural expectations as well. For myself as a Latina, I think it's more commonly known that the woman in the house or the girl in the house will be the one ending up taking care of mom and dad. And I'm the youngest one. And so we consider everybody else that they will have their own lives. But I think at the end of the day, I'm really going to have mom and dad. But we think about this like as a future context when they're very much elderly and older. But sometimes it doesn't happen that way. Sometimes it happens way before that timeline. And we've seen stories of like where parents become disabled or children, even in different countries, having to take on a working because the parent is no longer able to care for themselves or they have to take care of their elderly. And so there's many ways in which we come in to take on this role. But over time, really, what does it do to us? And that's really where I want you to like focus in on is if you've been carrying this load, if you've been carrying the weight of scheduling, of coming back and forth, or even feeling guilty in taking time off, it becomes exhausting over time. Recently, as I've mentioned, like I've been in and out of this role from time to time. My mom too. She fractured her hand recently, and she's the one that usually does childcare for my baby. And so it really changed the whole dynamic. But it was hard to take some time even to myself because feeling the need of you have to be there, you have to take care of the parent that needs to be taken care of. And as well, when I was having this conversation with Keith, he was mentioning to me the priorities of not forgetting that he also has his responsibilities, being a father, being a caretaker for his household, being a husband. And so having to kind of balance some of these responsibilities and roles of, okay, I'm Denise, the daughter, but I'm also Denise, the wifey, and I'm Denise, the mom, and I'm Denise, the therapist, and I'm Denise, all these roles that we have as a person, and having to find a balance within those as well. And so recently, even in my personal encounter with a guilt that came with caregiving, it's summer. I have to take the kids out. It's time for them to enjoy some of the summer activities. But even having to step away from the caregiver role gives a little bit of anxiety like, well, who's going to do this and who's going to prepare this and who's going to take that? So even the mental like barrier from having to separate of like, okay, I planned as much as I could. I took care of everything that I can. It might not be ideal, but I also need to stay away and try not to feel bad about it. And so very much so, I remember just having like an internal battle with myself, crying, trying to get third party opinions, second party opinions. What do you think? What do you think? What do you think? And there's just so many opposing thoughts, opinions to the same activity that you're doing, but it's different because you're the only one in this particular experience. You're the only one with your mental capabilities, your physical capabilities, your role and circumstances. You are unique. And so, although someone else can manage it and do it different, it would be with their own uniqueness. So it's very different how it kind of plays out in our lives to lives. So coming into this season, something that the Color Coffee Collective and Be Nurtured incorporated, we want to really mobilize our communities to participate in what it means to be a caretaker, but take care of the caretaker. And so the Color Coffee Collective is going to be doing multiple activations between now all the way to November to help with this initiative. They have the Alzheimer's Walk happening on November 7th, and we want the community to really show up and show out. Look up on their website, become a team member, and come out to this event. For Be Nurtured Incorporated, we'll be having a set of conversations through Zoom where caretakers can tap in, spend a couple of minutes to kind of debrief their day, how they've been feeling, and leave at least with a offering of a coping tool and a mechanism to really help offload some of the mental weight of what it feels like to be a caretaker. And so I really hope that this can be fruitful for our community. If you have any thoughts or ideas, or as well, if you want to share your experience as a caretaker, please leave us your personal testimony in the comments. Let us know that you're out there, that you're not alone, especially when it comes to being a caretaker. Sometimes it's like, I'm alone. No one's here. I'm by myself. I'm the only one and the individual, right? But I can feel very isolating over long periods of time. And so let us know how you're managing. What are some of those things that you do to kind of keep yourself sane in the midst and giving yourself grace? But thank you so much for tuning in to today's conversation. Today's very short and sweet. We had something fuller planned out, but sometimes we have to pivot and shift just as we do in life. And I hope that you really enjoyed today's short, big conversation. Follow the Color Coffee Collective, which has multiple of the initiatives. Also support in donating in return for their 1866 coffee, in which is helping students and those in the community learn about the coffee industry, learn some skill sets, and be part of conversations that they were never part of or designed to be part of. And so they're also doing a lot of beautiful initiatives, and I'm really happy to share that we're collaborating with them. But I hope you tune in next time and see you later.